All right. Hello, students. Welcome back to class. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. If I'm audible, please let me know. Online students. All right. Thank you. Right. So, in our previous lecture, we had covered the Stone Ages up to the Neolithic age. Now we need to start with the next stage of human development in the Chalcolithic age. Right? Why is it known as the Chalcolithic age? Chalco is Greek for copper and lith is Greek for stone. So this was the copper stone age. This age is also known by another name. A Neolithic age. Spelling may be different, alag-alag variations hai. ANEO or ANAEO, both you may find. It also means the same thing. Aneo is another word for Greek word for copper. Okay? So what does this name suggest? क्या नया development हुआ होगा? The use of copper started. This was the first instance when human beings started using metal for making tools. Right? What were the characteristics of this age? It was characterized by the emergence of agro-pastoral communities in different parts of the subcontinent. What do you understand by this term, agro-pastoral communities? That means groups of people who practice both agriculture as well as pastoralism. What is pastoralism? The practice of domesticating grazing animals for the purpose of either meat or milk or other goods. Okay? Now, where did these communities emerge? In different parts of the subcontinent. Right? Now, if you were to take a look at the map, it is easy to identify their distribution. Prominent Chalcolithic communities were distributed in places such as northern Rajasthan. Here, a culture known as the Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture flourished. In southeastern Rajasthan, in the Udaipur Rajsamand district areas, along the valley of the Ahar river, the Ahar Banas culture flourished. Then further towards the south, in the valley of the Chambal river, around the type site of Kayat, present day Ujjain, the Kayat culture flourished. Now, this culture flourished from roughly 2250 to about 1700 BC, after which it suddenly disappeared. And in the same location, another more extensive culture emerged, known as the Malwa culture. Okay? Then, in the Saurashtra region of Gujarat, the Prabhas Rangpur culture appeared, from around 2000 BCE. Then further to the south, in the Dhule district region and Pune district region, another Chalcolithic culture known as the Savalda culture emerged. And in the same vicinity, another much more extensive and developed network of sites which overlapped with both the Savalda cultural zone as well as the Malwa cultural zone emerged, known as the Jorwe culture. Of course, all of these sites did not appear simultaneously, nor did they disappear simultaneously. But if we were to give them a cultural or chronological context, we would say that most of them belong to the period of around 4000 to 1000 BCE. This is the map of the Chalcolithic cultures of India belonging to this period. Okay? Then, apart from this, there were some early Harappan or pre-Harappan Chalcolithic cultures which also flourished in this region, in the region of present-day Pakistan. These include the Iran Balochi culture, the Khaggar Akra culture, etc. Further, we have the Sothi Siswal culture. They flourished from roughly 4000 to 2500 BCE before the people responsible for these cultures actually evolved into the Harappan civilization themselves. Okay? Then, among the Chalcolithic cultures, we have another collection of cultures which appeared after the decline of the Harappan civilization. These are known as the late Harappan cultures. So, among the late Harappan cultures, एक तो हम इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं प्रभास रंगपुर कल्चर को, ठीक है. Apart from that, we have the Gandhar grave culture in the region of northern Punjab in Pakistan and parts of southeastern Afghanistan. Further, in the region of both western and eastern Punjab, centered around the type site of Harappa, we have the cemetery H culture. And then in the region of Sindh, over here, we have what is known as the Jhukar culture. Right? The time period for the flourishing of these cultures was following the decline of the Harappan civilization. That means from around 1900 to around 1300 BCE, right? Now, since by this point of time, especially from 1500 BCE onwards, a number of foreigners had started to come and settle in this region. Who were these people? The Aryans, right? Therefore, some of the cultural attributes of the Aryans were also absorbed by the people of the late Harappan cultures. Then, through the process of cultural diffusion, this culture also imparted some of its attributes to the cultures which were flourishing in the eastern regions, right? And that is why we see the intermixing of various cultural streams, the native Chalcolithic cultures, the Harappan culture, as well as the फॉरेन आर्यन कल्चर. ठीक है. सो कल्चरल डिफ्यूजन में और कल्चरल इंटरलिंकेज में दिस कैलकोलिथिक पीरियड प्लेज अ वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल. क्लियर है? अलग अलग स्टेजेस में, अलग अलग पीरियड्स में और अलग अलग रीजन्स में इसका डेवलपमेंट हुआ है. क्लियर? नाउ व्हाई आई हैव शोन यू दिस मैप, so that if a question arises in your examination and there is an opportunity to draw a map, you should be able to do so. And this kind of exercise is not useful only for history or geography, but for other subjects as well. पॉलिटी में भी आपको हो सकता है इसको अपॉर्चुनिटी मिले, इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस में जरूर मिलेगा. सो ट्राई एंड इनकॉर्पोरेट मैप्स along with your notes, right? Try and think in terms of the developments as they were taking place on the map itself. And this is not only going to be able to help you visualize things better, it will also fetch you greater marks if you are able to incorporate them into your answers in a, you can say, integrated manner. तो ऐसा नहीं लगना चाहिए कि जबरदस्ती चिपका रखा है. It is part of your answer. So try and do this. इतना पिक्चर क्लियर है? इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ कल्चर्स. सो प्रोसेस ऐसा हुआ that late Harappan culture formed the common link between the native Chalcolithic, which lay towards the east and the south, and the Aryan culture, which started emerging in the subcontinent in the northwestern part from around 1500 BCE onwards. Through the process of cultural assimilation and diffusion, what is going to happen? Are any of these three cultures going to be able to completely retain their original features? No. So they are going to lose their original features, but at the same time, a composite culture stretched across the subcontinent is going to emerge. Would it have the elements of only one of these cultures or all of these cultures? All of these cultures. So it is in fact these late Harappan cultures which contain the secret to India's remarkable cultural continuity through time. ठीक है? So that is what we were talking about. Now coming back to your notes. टेक्नोलॉजी में क्या चेंजेस हुए? Would they stop the use of stone tools? No. So the use of stone tools continued, but along with that, copper also emerged as an important material. Tools such as axes, copper angles, copper boards, knives, pins, hooks, rods, etc. These are going to be fashioned out of these metals, this metal. Right? Now talking about the occupation, क्या occupation रहता होगा इनका? They were agro-pastoralist communities. That means animal domestication and cultivation of crops were their chief occupations. How else did they use to obtain food? Did they stop hunting and fishing? No, they continued to do so. So the people continued to hunt, gather, domesticate animals and cultivate their food. Domesticated animals में क्या-क्या involved थे? Sheep, buffalo, goat, pig, dog, etc. Crops grown were barley, wheat, rice, lentils, millets, grams, peas, cotton, etc. Right? So a wide variety of animals are being domesticated and a large variety of crops are also being domesticated. Both food crops as well as non-food crops were domesticated. Other important occupations included things such as pottery, metallurgy, weaving, bead making, shell work, etc. But at this point of time, what do you think was the size of the agricultural surplus? Was it relatively small or was it quite large? It was relatively small still. As a result, एक important process अभी तक नहीं emerge हो पाया था. That is craft specialization. What is craft specialization? When different groups of people are involved in completely different crafts, right? In completely different secondary economic activities. So there would be a separate group of weavers, a separate group of metallurgists, a separate group of potters, a separate group of textile makers, etc. For this to emerge, what is necessary? The volume of crafts production should be such so that this kind of differentiation can be justified, right? At this point of time, since the surplus was low, do you think that this kind of differentiation could have taken place? No. Therefore, these were probably cottage industries, that is household industries. Ordinary people in their free time used to engage in such a crafts productions. Okay? That means there were no specialized groups for these activities. Clear hai? Living pattern कैसा था? Would they have moved around from place to place in search of food, or would they live in permanently settled settlements, villages? Permanently settled villages. So they lived in settled villages with well-established socio-economic hierarchies as well. What reflects the hierarchical nature of the society? The disparity in their size of houses, the type of grave goods that we are finding. The houses of different sizes made up of burnt bricks have been discovered. The concept of private property, was it present or not? It was present. And कैसे पता लगता है? See, almost all the houses had their own separate animal enclosures, indicating that these animals were privately owned by the people who were living in the houses to which they were attached, right? Community ownership होता है तो क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? Do you find separate animal enclosures or a single animal enclosure in which the entire tribe's animals are kept? Single. यहाँ पे अलग-अलग, right? So almost all houses had animal enclosures, which indicates that animals were privately owned instead of being owned by the communities as a whole. Secondly, with the burial of the dead with their personal belongings also points towards the concept of private property, along with one thing else. Kya? Belief in the concept of life after death, belief in the afterlife. Were these isolated communities or did they have contact with each other? They had contact with each other. How do we know? items produced by one community are found in distant locations. For example, almost all the copper tools that were used by the Chalcolithic people originated only from one site. कहां से? From this particular location. यहाँ पे एक बहुत फेमस कॉपर माइंस हैं, अभी भी फंक्शन करती हैं. हिंदुस्तान कॉपर लिमिटेड ऑपरेट्स फ्रॉम देयर, known as the Khetri mines, right? Located in the Jhunjhunu district in northern Rajasthan. And it is from here that the entire copper that was being used by all these Chalcolithic communities was sourced. In fact, this was also a major place for supplying copper to the Harappan people when it was flourishing. Clear hai? Sure. So some Chalcolithic cultures had contact with contemporary cultures such as the Harappan Civilization. The Harappans obtained their copper from the Khetri mines in Rajasthan. Secondly, archaeological evidence also suggests that Chalcolithic pottery was used by the Harappans, since pottery from the Rangpur and Prabhas culture has been found at several Harappan sites. यहाँ की pottery को क्या बोलते हैं? It is known as the lustrous redware pottery. It was the typical pottery of the Saurashtra region and has been found from other regions as well, indicating that pots manufactured in Prabhas or Rangpur were being exported to other regions. That means there was contact, right? Now, when it comes to their cultural activities, what were the major activities? Painting of pottery. So painted pottery emerged during this period. The characteristic pottery of this age is known as ochre colored pottery, right? Ochre is a shade of red, जिसको गेरुआ रंग बोलते हैं, right? So ochre colored pottery emerged during this period and was painted with designs of things such as flowers, animals, birds, linear patterns painted on them in black, etc. Okay? So the base color of the pot was ochre and the painting was done in black color. Now, this is a list of all the important Chalcolithic cultures that existed in India. Ahar culture, kahan par? Southern Rajasthan, Banas River Valley, Ahar, Gilund and Balathara are the important sites. Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, northeastern Rajasthan near Jaipur. This is about 80 kilometers north of Jaipur. Ganeshwar and Jodhpura are the important sites. Kayat culture, Madhya Pradesh, Chambal Valley. Type site is Kayat, present day Ujjain. Malwa culture, this, as I told you, emerged in place of Kayat around 1700 BC. Important sites are Navdatoli, Iran and Nagda. Jorwe culture, located in Maharashtra, Daimabad and Inamgaon are the most important sites. And the Prabhas Rangpur culture, located in the Saurashtra region of Gujarat, has Rangpur as the most important type site. Okay? Now, some of these sites are of additional importance. For example, at Iran, we find mud fortifications. At Daimabad, we find that in the surrounding area, there was a cluster of smaller sites. What does this indicate? That there is a larger site in the middle and several smaller sites around it. Why do you think such a pattern may have emerged? हाँ, ये बड़ा settlement था. It was acting as the nerve center of this entire cultural zone. Probably the people from the surrounding communities congregated over here in order to exchange their goods. This may have emerged as a center of regional trade as well. Okay? Then at Ganeshwar, you find a large collection of copper tools. Right? And unique thing क्या है इसमें? All these tools have the maker's mark. तो जो भी कोई आर्टिस्ट अपने किसी पेंटिंग को बनाता है तो उस पर साइन करता है, और इवन द क्लोथ्स दैट यू वेयर, जिस कंपनी ने मैन्युफैक्चर किया उस पर अपना लोगो लगा देता है ब्रांड का. तो दिस वाज दैट काइंड ऑफ अ मार्क. इट हैड अ मेकर्स मार्क. एंड इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग क्या है यहाँ पे जानने के लिए? That other artifacts containing the same maker's mark have been found from as far south as Daimabad. That means the communities in Maharashtra may have been in direct contact with the communities living in northern Rajasthan. Okay? So these are some other additional important informations. Now, what are the things to remember over here? Chalcolithic age में, firstly, the first use of metal or copper started. Secondly, agriculture and pastoralism. Agro-pastoralism was the chief source of subsistence. Thirdly, hunting, gathering, and fishing activities were used for supplementing the diet. Fourthly, we have evidence of relatively larger permanently settled villages. The society had started showing signs of greater social stratification. The concept of private property had become stronger. क्वेश्चन आया है, सर, वर हॉर्सेस आल्सो डोमेस्टिकेटेड इन द कैलकोलिथिक पीरियड? बताइए. There is no evidence to suggest that horses were domesticated at this point of time. Wild varieties of horses did exist, but we have not found any horse remains from a domesticated site, from a settled site, right? So probably horses were not domesticated. At different Chalcolithic communities, traded with each other that we can say for certain. Trade was conducted on the basis of the barter system. The use of script was unknown. ठीक है, स्क्रिप्ट का कोई हमको एविडेंस नहीं मिला है. द ओनली स्क्रिप्ट एविडेंस वी गेट इज फ्रॉम द सोथी सीसवाल कल्चर, बट दीज वर दी प्री हरप्पन कल्चर्स, राइट. तो हम इनको ऑर्डिनरी कैलकुलिथिक में नहीं गिनते हैं. Agricultural surplus wasn't large enough to support craft specialization. ठीक है, the most important thing to remember is that these people were living at the same time as the Harappan civilization was flourishing. So although Harappan civilization had many of these characteristics such as extensive long distance trade, the presence of a well developed and widespread script, urban town planning, etc., ये यहाँ पे नहीं present थे. ठीक है, so despite being contemporary of the Harappan civilization, the Chalcolithic cultures displayed a relatively lower level of material development. ठीक है, these are the important points to be noted about the Chalcolithic culture. Take down a question. Throw light on the distribution and characteristics of the Chalcolithic cultures in the Indian subcontinent. कल भी आई थिंक एक या दो क्वेश्चंस दिए थे आप लोगों को, लिख के लाए हो? ओके, गुड. जस्ट सम जनरल गाइडलाइंस कि आंसर्स आपके दिखने कैसे चाहिए कॉस्मेटिकली, राइट. सो इन योर examination hall, you'll be provided with question cum answer sheets, right? Now, at the top of the sheet, your questions are going to be printed like this. For a 200-word question, you will get 3 pages. तो यानी कि 3 sides आपको मिलेंगी, right? For a 250-word question, you will get 4 pages. For a 150-word question, you will get 2 pages. आपके आंसर के कॉस्मेटिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स क्या क्या होने चाहिए? फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, it does not matter whether you're writing in paragraph form or point form. आपका पर्पस है so that you can obtain as many marks as possible, and wherever it is feasible or wherever you feel you can use paragraphs, and wherever you feel you can use points, or you can mix the two as well. ठीक है, तो आप चाहो तो अपना आधा आंसर पॉइंट फॉर्म में, आधा आंसर पैराग्राफ फॉर्म में लिख सकते हो. Also you can incorporate small diagrams or maps. लेकिन कोई भी डायग्राम और मैप बनाना हो तो मेक श्योर दैट यू पुट इट इनसाइड अ नीट लिटिल बॉक्स. ठीक है, कॉस्मेटिकली कोई भी आप नया पैराग्राफ शुरू करते हैं, डोंट बिगिन इट जस्ट राइट फ्रॉम द मार्जिन, राइट? लीव सम स्पेस सो दैट देयर इज क्लियर डिस्टिंक्शन बिटवीन द डिफरेंट सेक्शंस ऑफ योर आंसर. योर पैराग्राफ्स शुड हैव लाइंस दैट आर इवनली स्पेस्ड. तो दोनों लाइंस के बीच में स्पेस बहुत ज्यादा डिफरेंट नहीं होना चाहिए, इवनली स्पेस होना चाहिए. None of your paragraphs should be more than 5 or 6 lines. तो एक पैराग्राफ में 2 या 3 सेंटेंसेस या 5 और 6 लाइंस. उससे ज्यादा हो रहा है तो ब्रेक द पैराग्राफ, राइट? इफ यू आर राइटिंग इन पॉइंट फॉर्म, मेक श्योर दैट आप बुलेट्स यूज कर रहे हैं. नंबरिंग को अवॉइड करिएगा, बिकॉज द एग्जामिनर मे एक्सपेक्ट that a particular explanation may require at least 6 important points, but you have written only 4, right? So he may think that the information that you have provided is not sufficient. So in order to avoid such a situation from happening, use bullet points instead of numbers. ठीक है, bullet points भी आपके evenly aligned होने चाहिए, right? Important keywords which you feel it is important to draw the attention of the examiner towards, you should underline. एक बार underline करना है, it is not necessary to use a different colored pen. ठीक? Then you will have the opportunity of dividing your answers into different parts. It is important that you highlight those different parts with suitable headings and subheadings. And how to highlight कि ये heading या subheading है, इसको एक बॉक्स के अंदर रख दो. ठीक है, सो कॉस्मेटिकली आपके आंसर में ये फीचर्स होने चाहिए. These 2 margins on either side are not to be trifled with. Respect these margins. And जो word limit होती है ना, you should try and adhere to this as well. Why? If you spill over the margins or if you exceed the word limit, क्या मैसेज जाता है एग्जामिनर को? That you do not have the discipline necessary to stay within bounds, right? And that can give a negative impression, right? So respect the margins and respect the word limit. Clear है? It is not important that you have very beautiful handwriting, but it is important that your writing should be legible. पढ़ने में आ जाना चाहिए, that is it. ठीक है? So cosmetically, these are the qualities that your answers should have. Now, do you want me to discuss कि आंसर कैसे अप्रोच करना है या फिर अपने आप से करने की कोशिश करोगे? खुद करोगे? स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन एंड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स के बारे में आपको बात करनी है. So you will talk about their technology, their dwelling pattern, their social organization, the elements of political hierarchy if present, if any. For example, from Iran we have seen the presence of a mud fortification wall. What does that tell us? That some kind of government or functionary must have been there who was able to organize labor and bring about the construction of that wall. So this indicates unequal power distribution. It may also have indicated the possibility of a struggle or conflict between 2 different political systems, right? So usse protect karne ke liye wo fortification wall banaya tha. These kinds of things you'll have to talk about. Clear? Right. Now, next we come to the Harappan Civilization. What are the things that we have to talk about? First of all, how was this civilization unearthed? Right now, during the 1850s, इंडिया में इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट का काम तेजी से बढ़ने लगा. Right, one of the most important aspects of infrastructure development was transportation and communication infrastructure. So it was from the 1850s onwards that under the leadership of Dalhousie, railway lines, roadways, telegraph lines, they all started to be laid down. The initial stages were concentrated, or road construction were concentrated in the area of Maharashtra and northern UP. But from the 1860s onwards, the railway lines started to be expanded. Next phase of expansion हुआ in the region of Punjab. Because of its high fertility and good population base, the British felt that this could be a very lucrative market for British goods. So railway lines were laid down over here. Now, during the construction of the railways, some artifacts such as pottery, tools, ornaments, etc. were discovered from some places. However, instead of stopping the construction, railway construction continued, and in fact, many of the burnt bricks that were left behind by this ancient culture, they were used by the railway construction officers for making their railways, for making their stations. So some sites were even damaged by this. Now, in the 1870s, in 1861, एक और चीज हुई. The Archaeological Survey of India was established. Its first Director General was Alexander Cunningham, right? When he came across reports of such findings, he expressed interest in excavating this region. A few preliminary excavations were conducted by Alexander Cunningham, but no concrete discoveries could be made, right? The issue finally captured the attention of the British in the early 20th century when some excavations were planned, but they had to be postponed due to the outbreak of the First World War. And it was only after the end of the First World War that detailed excavations could be organized. सबसे पहला excavation कहाँ पे हुआ? At Harappa. In 1921, two archaeologists, John Marshall, who at the time was the Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, and a famous Indian excavator archaeologist, Dayaram Sahani, they excavated Harappa. Where is it located? In the Montgomery district of Punjab, present day Pakistan, on the banks of the river Ravi. Okay? And thus, this new civilization was named after the first excavated site, the Harappan Civilization. The very next year, in 1922, Rakhal Das Banerjee excavated Mohenjo-daro in the Larkana district of Sindh, in present day Pakistan, on the banks of the river Indus, right? And with these two discoveries, it became clear that civilization existed in India even during the Bronze Age. In fact, India was the civilizational centers of probably one of the greatest Bronze Ages ever. Okay? Now, what were the characteristics of this civilization? First of all, the Harappan civilization was a riverine civilization. What is a riverine civilization? Where most of the important cities are located along the river banks. What kinds of rivers? Ephemeral rivers or perennial rivers? Perennial rivers. Since most of the cities of the Harappan civilization were located on the Indus or the Saraswati or their tributaries, therefore it is a riverine civilization. All the important sites were situated along important perennial rivers such as, and their tributaries, the Indus, Saraswati, that is the present day Ghaggar-Hakra river system. This was because the Harappans practiced intensive agriculture and depended heavily upon flood irrigation, right? So without this water supply, the civilization could never have emerged. Secondly, the Harappan civilization belongs to the great tradition. Great tradition किसको बोलते हैं? Those traditions where literacy is high. And how do we know that literacy may have been high in the Harappan civilization? Because of the widespread use of script. Specimens of the Harappan script, where have they been found from? Have they been found from walls of monuments or great temples? No. They have been found from objects of daily use, such as seals or pots or signboards, meaning that ordinary people were making these symbols, right? Ordinary people were doing all this writing, right? That is, literacy was widespread, as is evident from seals, pots, signboards, etc. Since the Harappan script remains undeciphered, the civilization was proto-historic and not historic civilization, right? Fourthly, it was a Bronze Age civilization. Bronze Age civilization is a collection of civilizations which flourished around the 5000 BC to around the 2000 BC period, where bronze was the basis of the civilization. Bronze होता क्या है? It is an alloy of copper and other metals, primarily tin. But और भी metals use हो सकते हैं, for example arsenic or lead, etc. Right? But primarily tin is used for making bronze. It was a Bronze Age civilization and was a contemporary of other Bronze Age civilizations such as the Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian civilization, the Persian civilization, and the Wang Ho civilization, the Chinese civilization. Right? Among all these civilizations, it was unique. Why? Because the extensive town planning visible in the Harappan cities was not present in any of the other contemporary Bronze Age civilizations. कुछ और यूनिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स भी यहाँ पे हमको देखने के लिए मिलते हैं. So open your notebooks, give the heading Harappan Civilization, subheading Discovery, write down 1921 John Marshall and Dayaram Sahni excavated Harappa. And 1922 Rakhaldas Banerjee excavated Mohenjo-daro. This provided the earliest proof of a well-developed Bronze Age civilization in the Indus Valley having flourished well before the Vedic age. Now, before this, the popular belief was that the Vedic age was the oldest evidence of a civilizational stage having been achieved by Indians in the whole of Indian history. This pushed the antiquity of Indian civilization by almost 1500 years before that period. Okay? Characteristics of the Harappan civilization. It was a riverine civilization. Secondly, it was part of the sisterhood of other Bronze Age civilizations. It had a diverse, progressive, and cosmopolitan culture. Meaning people from different races, different ethnicities, different religious backgrounds lived together in harmony in the bustling metropolises of the Harappan civilization. How do we know this? Because from the representation of statues, from the analysis of the skeletal remains, we know that people of different racial backgrounds were living over here. From the burial remains, from the idols, from the images on seals, we know that different gods and goddesses existed, different burial practices, different ritual systems existed. That means different religious beliefs were present. And finally, the high degree of overseas trade is also evidence of the fact that the minds of the people were open. They were open-minded. They were not closed off. They did not fear or hate outsiders. Rather, they welcomed them, interacted with them openly. So it was a diverse, progressive, and cosmopolitan culture. Fourthly, it was part of the great tradition. It had extensive overseas trade. It was an extremely wealthy civilization, right? Prosperity was high, but wealth, unlike other Bronze Age civilizations, was not concentrated in the hands of a few individuals. It was relatively well distributed. How do we know this? Some of the other Bronze Age civilizations, उनके नाम आपको याद है? मेसोपोटामिया, इजिप्ट, पर्शिया, चाइना, राइट? यहाँ पे क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है अर्बन मॉर्फोलॉजी में? Do we find extensive town planning? No, that is absent. In fact, what we find is that the houses of the elites or the grand public monuments, they were made out of burnt bricks, whereas the ordinary people were living in relatively poorer quality houses made of mud bricks. In Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and other Harappan cities, what do we find? That all these structures, whether they were elite structures or the houses of the common people, they were made of the best quality material, that is burnt bricks, right? So the society was egalitarian and prosperous. Now, based upon our understanding of the Harappan civilization, would it be correct to say that they had a good understanding of science and technology or not? Yes, they had an advanced knowledge base. How can we make this pronouncement? Extensive town planning, that means they had good understanding of geometry, the presence of metals of different varieties for making ornaments or different tools, that means they had good understanding of metallurgy. Not only metallurgy, but pyrotechny, making fire kilns and obtaining temperatures which were high enough to smelt metals, right? These kinds of things. So they were not forging metals simply, they were casting metals. That means melting them first and then pouring them into an open cast to make statues or tools, etc. These kinds of things we know about. Then they had good understanding of numerology, right, or number systems. In fact, from the collection of different weights and measure systems, we know that they had access to different kinds of number systems. They use the binary system, they use the decimal system, the hexadecimal system, etc. Right? So these things they were aware of. Now, one unique element of the Harappan civilization was that it seems to be relatively peaceful, in fact, remarkably peaceful. That means, although a political elite must have definitely existed, it was not using violence in order to enforce its control. It was using some other means, maybe some ideological means such as religion or maybe cultural connections, etc. उसके ऊपर डिपेंड करता था. But what do we not have evidence of? Large scale invasions or wars or battles ever taking place. So it was a relatively peaceful society. And this is an exception when we consider the pattern of the rest of the Bronze Age. It was an extremely violent period in human history in other parts of the world. Okay? And finally, as compared to the other Bronze Age civilizations, the Harappan civilization was uniquely large, right? It is almost at least 4 times as large as the other largest civilization, that is the Egyptian civilization, right? So it was an extensive civilization. Okay? So these are some of the other important characteristics. आगे बढ़े. Now, next we need to talk about the origin of the Harappan civilization. Now, problem with studying the Harappan civilization, सबसे बड़ा problem क्या है? What is the biggest hurdle? That the script remains undeciphered, and as a result there remain a number of uncertainties. Okay? As a result of which different historians have given their own interpretations with respect to different important questions regarding the Harappan civilization. For example, what were the factors behind the origin of the Harappan civilization? What explains the decline of the Harappan civilization? What was the exact nature of the Harappan political system? Was it characterized by uniformity or diversity, the Harappan civilization? In सब के बारे में we do not have any concrete clear-cut answers, right? As a result, the matter of the origin of the Harappan civilization has also become a subject of debate. Primarily, there are 2 kinds of theories. The theory of foreign origin, also known as the theory of sudden origin, or the diffusion theory. And secondly, we have the theory of indigenous origin or gradual origin, right? Now, who were the earliest scholars to study the excavated sites of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro? Were these colonial historians or were these Indian nationalist historians? Colonial historians. Do you think that the colonial historians who always seek to justify the establishment of British rule and deny the past achievements of Indians, will they ever accept that such a grand civilization could have been the work of Indians themselves? Or would they try to give the credit to some outsiders? किसी बाहर वाले को देंगे, right? And that is why they came up with the idea of foreign origin. So scholars such as Gordon or Kramer or E. Mortimer Wheeler suggested that it was either foreign settlers who came to the region of Punjab and established the civilization in a very short period of time, in a matter of a couple of centuries, 3 centuries, or it was ideas from Mesopotamia which were responsible for the establishment of the Harappan civilization. Clear hai? Sure. Now, what is the evidence that people such as Gordon, Kramer, or Mortimer Wheeler have put forward to support their theory? They have highlighted the similarities between the Harappan and Mesopotamian civilizations. What are the similarities that they highlighted? That both these were urban riverine civilizations. That in both these civilizations there was widespread use of script, that the dwellers of both these civilizations used clay seals or tablets. That people of both civilizations were adept in bronze metallurgy. And that structures in both civilizations were made of burnt bricks. Okay? And since the Mesopotamian civilization was clearly the older civilization, that means the Harappan civilization must have been set up either on the basis of the ideas derived from Mesopotamia or by the Mesopotamian people who came and settled in the region of the Indus Valley themselves. Clear? However, this theory has certain holes, in fact, very important holes. There are several limitations. Kya? That first of all, the similarities that have been cited by the supporters of this theory are superficial, they're not substantial. For example, it is true that both of them had large cities, but the nature of the cities was very different. In the Harappan civilization, what do we find? Planned or unplanned cities? Planned cities. But in the Mesopotamian civilization, what do we find? Unplanned urbanization or haphazard growth. Okay? Secondly, while it is true that both used script, both had their script, these scripts were not the same. The Harappan civilization script was a pictographic script consisting of close to 400 symbols, right? Whereas the Mesopotamian civilization script was a cuneiform alphabetical script. The word cuneiform comes from the Greek word cunis. Cunis का मतलब होता है stylus. So you may think of it like a small twig or a pencil, which was probably used to make certain marks on a tablet of wet clay, right? And once the clay dried, the writing would become permanent. तो वहां पे pictures नहीं बनाई जाती थी. In fact, flowing alphabets, characters बनाए जाते थे. ठीक है? Thirdly, both had seals. It is true, but seals in the Harappan civilization, what was their size? What was their shape? Square or rectangular? Whereas in the Mesopotamian civilization, the seals were cylindrical. It is true that bronze metallurgy was known to both the Harappans as well as the Mesopotamians, but the Mesopotamian metallurgical knowledge with regards to bronze seems to be far more advanced. It seems to be far more superior than Harappan understanding. ठीक है? And lastly, while burnt bricks were used by both the Harappans and the Mesopotamians, what do we find? ज़्यादा widespread use कहाँ पे होता था? In the Harappan civilization. It was used universally for all kinds of structures. While in the Mesopotamian civilization, it was used extremely rarely. So while burnt brick was abundant in the case of the Harappan civilization, its use was quite rare in the case of the Mesopotamian civilization. ठीक है? तो एक तो ये वीकनेस है. सेकेंड वीकनेस, further archaeological excavations, what do they reveal? They reveal the presence of habitation in the core zone of the Harappan civilization, dating back thousands of years before the emergence of the Harappan civilization itself. And what do we find? There is gradual material improvement in the conditions of the people, right? So further archaeological excavation has revealed occupation of the Harappan habitation zone for thousands of years preceding the Harappan civilization itself. And this further weakens the argument that Harappan civilization suddenly came into existence due to the contributions of outsiders within a matter of half a millennium or even lesser. ठीक है? And lastly, from a place called Rakhi, two separate groups of researchers conducted a DNA study, right? And what did they find in this DNA study? In fact, what did they not find in this DNA study? A particular genetic marker, that is the R1A1 gene. This genetic marker is considered to be a common trait of all the descendants of the Iranian steppe dwellers. Okay? So it is a marker of Iranian steppe ancestry. And was this gene found from the skeletons at Rakhigarhi? Nahi mila. That means the skeletons at Rakhigarhi, did they have this foreign ancestry? Foreign gene tha? Nahi tha. And this has conclusively disproved the theory of foreign origin of the Harappan civilization. So this was not found. समझ में आया है? तो first theory has been completely discarded. As a result, most modern scholars believe in the indigenous or gradual origin of the Harappan civilization. Right? Now, in the northwestern portion of the subcontinent, agriculture started as early as around 7000 BCE, marking the beginning of the Neolithic age. The earliest sites where agriculture started included Nal, Zob, Kulli, Quetta, Mundigak, and Mehergarh. ठीक है? Where are these sites located? In present day Balochistan or on the Pakistan Afghanistan border. What are the climatic conditions of this region? Relatively dry and cold or warm, wet and humid? Relatively dry and cold. Right? Do you think agriculture would have been extremely productive? No. So they were practicing subsistence level primitive agriculture. Right? Now, as a result, do you think these peoples would have depended only on agriculture for fulfilling their subsistence needs? No, they would also have relied quite heavily on pastoralism. In fact, it is possible that while some sections of the population were involved in agricultural activities, some other sections were permanently involved in pastoral activities. And pastoralism, what is the pattern that we find? Permanent settlement in a single location or seasonal migration from place to place? Seasonal migration, right? So from the Balochi highlands, which formed the central cultural zone of this region, these people would have migrated during the wetter season down into the fields, both towards Iran as well as towards present day Pakistan, Punjab, right? And during the winter season, they would have migrated back towards the Balochi highlands, right? Suleiman Kirtar ranges और उसके जो foothills हैं वहां पे चले जाएंगे वापस, right? And during these migrations, what did they discover? That for agriculture, there are far more suitable locations than the region of Balochistan, right? And from around 5000 BCE onwards, small groups of these Balochi tribesmen began migrating towards the upper reaches of the Indus River, right? So settlement in the upper reaches of the Indus started, resulting in the emergence of new Neolithic villages at places such as Rahman Dheri, Rana Gundai, Kila Tarkai, etc. Right? At the same time, by this point of time, the Neolithic tool technology had also improved. And the combination of the presence of relatively more fertile lands and better technology resulted in the growth of agricultural productivity. As agricultural productivity increased, what would happen to population? That would also increase. ठीक है? Now, this region, किसी भी river valley का जो upper regions होते हैं, upper courses होते हैं, are they the most suitable zones for agriculture? Or are the lower regions, mid and lower valleys, they are more suitable? मिड जैसे जैसे आप और पास जाते जाओगे डेल्टा के पास, वैसे वैसे कंडीशंस इंप्रूव होते जाएंगे. देयरफॉर this region, although agricultural productivity had increased, it was facing certain problems with regards to food supply. As a result, there would be a second stage of migration. From around 3500 BCE, settlement in the lower valley of the Indus began at places such as Amri, Kot Diji, Chanhuddaro and Harappa, right? The climate was much milder, the fertility was much higher, and the stone tool technology had also increased, also improved quite substantially, right? As a result, the stage of agricultural surplus started to emerge, started to form. And what would be the knock-on effects of agricultural surplus? The proliferation and specialization of crafts. That means the number of crafts being practiced, that is going to increase. At the same time, trade is also going to increase. Right? And what kind of an impact would it have on the size of these settlements? They would also increase. So villages transformed into small towns. And the early elements of town planning would emerge. Along with this, to facilitate trade, the use of script would also start taking place. Okay? So while not all the elements of the mature Harappan phase are visible at this point of time, उनका prototype यहाँ पे मिल जाता है. And this stage is known as the early Harappan age. Time period from 3500 to around 2600 BCE. Right? And then finally, when the volume of agricultural production, trade, etc. has reached its peak, we are going to enter from around 2600, or let us say in some cases even 2300 BCE, the mature Harappan phase. Complete with all the expected characteristics of Harappan civilization. That is, large, well planned, cities, extensive, overseas and internal trade, the widespread use of script, the universal use of burnt bricks, clearly well stratified society also emerged. So high social stratification and a remarkable degree of homogeneity would also characterize this phase. That means the features of the different cities and the features of both the social as well as material culture of the Harappan people throughout the extended Harappan zone would be quite similar to each other. For example, a standardized system of weights and measures would be used. Even the burnt bricks that are used across the Harappan civilization, they would be of the same proportions. 1:2:4 would be the ratio of their different dimensions, right? So, civilizational uniformity or homogeneity. Okay? Now, who were the important scholars associated with this particular theory? दो नाम, S.R. Sood and M.R. Mughal. ठीक है? Out of these two theories, which one do most historians believe is the correct explanation? First or second one? Second one, that is the theory of indigenous or gradual origin. Take down another question. Throw light on the debate regarding the origin of the Harappan civilization. Full stop. To what extent would it be correct to give the credit for Harappan urbanization to Mesopotamians? So in the answers to both these questions, you have to talk about the same set of things, but the way in which you frame both these answers, they are going to be different. समझ में आ रहा है क्यों डिफरेंट होगा? Because of the phrasing of both these questions. Subject matter क्या रहेगा दोनों के आंसर्स में? The debate with regards to the origin of the Harappan civilization, but you have to present it in different manners to answer both these questions, right? So using the same building blocks, you have to construct two different buildings. अब ये आपको skill develop करना पड़ेगा. Do you want me to show you how to do this या फिर खुद से attempt करोगे? I think you should attempt it on your own. क्योंकि अगर मैं बताते जाऊंगा तो बात नहीं बनने वाली है. एक बार लिख के लाओ, then let us see कि क्या improvement जरूरी है. दैट इज व्हाट द क्वेश्चन एक्सपेक्ट्स यू टू डू, बट ये ना केवल आपको अच्छा फील कराने के लिए यूपीएससी इस तरह से वर्ड करता है. टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट डू यू थिंक और वुड इट बी करेक्ट? You actually have to provide the actual opinion that is expressed by the scholars, but you have to present it as if it is the logical conclusion of all the arguments that you have made in the preceding part of your answer. ठीक है? So ये वाला जो question है ना, to what extent would it be correct? Final pronouncement, final judgment you will be providing in the conclusion. but on the basis of the arguments that you have already made in the main body of your answer. Therefore, it would be logically consistent. So it leaves very little space for you inserting your own thinking into it, right? Whatever is logically consistent, that you will have to support over here. Huh. नहीं, तो in that case, that would show that you do not have complete knowledge of the subject, right? So your knowledge itself is flawed. That is why your opinion is flawed over here. So that you would be doing yourself a disservice over here, especially if you are aware of the entire context. पूरा का पूरा debate है, दोनों पहलू आपको पता है, तो why write only about one side of the story? You should present the entire debate in that case. हाँ जी. दैट इज अप टू यू कि कितना करना है, राइट? तो एक बार करके देखो, एंड व्हेन यू आर राइटिंग दीज आंसर्स ना, तो फर्स्ट थिंग यू शुड डू इज ट्राई एंड विजुअलाइज कि आपको आंसर में कौन कौन से पॉइंट्स इंक्लूड करने हैं, कितने पार्ट्स में अपने आंसर को डिवाइड करना है, बिगिनिंग पॉइंट क्या होना चाहिए और एंड गोल क्या है, at what note you should be ending your answer, and then the pattern of your answer is going to unfold in front of you. So before, for the first 10 or 15 days, if you can do one exercise before you start attempting the actual question, try to prepare a blueprint. Introduction में मुझे क्या लिखना है, conclusion में मुझे क्या लिखना है, and how many parts are going to be there in the body, what I should write about first, what I should write about last, how much space or how much time I should give to either of these parts. ये exercise कर लोगे पहले, तो then the answer itself you would not have to do much. ठीक है? And gradually you will find that you won't need to use pen and paper. ये काम आपके माइंड में automatically at the back of your mind हो जाएगा. Now, so this was the debate with regards to the origin of the Harappan civilization. Next, we have to talk about the geographical extent of the Harappan civilization. So, as I think I have already mentioned, the Harappan civilization was the most extensive one in among all the other Bronze Age civilizations. Its geographical footprint is larger than even the present day country of Pakistan. It stands at more than 13 lakh square kilometers. And if you were to look at a map of this region, what do we find? That in Pakistan, it covers the present day provinces of Punjab, Sindh, and Balochistan. Okay? In India, it stretches from Jammu and Kashmir to Punjab to Haryana to Western UP, including Rajasthan, Gujarat, and present day Maharashtra. Right? The northernmost site in the entire Harappan civilization is Manda in present day Jammu. The westernmost site is Sutka Gendor on the Iran-Pakistan border along the Makran coast. The easternmost site is Alamgirpur, and the southernmost site, sorry, not over here, slightly to the east, is Daimabad in present day Maharashtra. ठीक है, तो 4 cardinal vertices you are aware of. Earlier it was believed that Malwan, which is also located in Maharashtra, was the southernmost site, but recent excavations at Daimabad have also revealed that late Harappan people settled over here. ठीक है, so that is why Daimabad is now regarded as the southernmost site. Now on the basis of this, क्या दिख रहा है? What is the general shape that you are obtaining? Square है, rectangular है, trapezoid है, or is it triangular? Triangular, right? So the shape of the civilization is roughly triangular. ठीक है, in fact यही question UPSC already पूछ चुका है. So you should be on the lookout for such questions, and once again importance of map आपको clear हो रहा होगा, right? Now ये तो हो गए the geographical footprint of the Harappan civilization. Next we have to talk about the important sites. So coming to the important sites, let us talk about them one by one. First of all, along the banks of the river Indus is located in Sindh a site known as Mohenjo-daro. कहाँ पे located है? In the Larkana district of Sindh in Pakistan. On the banks of which river? River Indus. What are the important monuments or artifacts that have been discovered from here? First of all, a great granary. Secondly, the great bath. Thirdly, a multi-pillared assembly hall. Fourthly, the bronze figurine of a dancing girl. Then a stone bust of a bearded priest. Then the largest collection of seals ever to have been discovered from the Harappan civilization. And finally, evidence of cotton textile manufacturing, cotton cloth, spindles, and worlds. ठीक है? What do each of these discoveries indicate, or what is their historical significance? The presence of a great granary. What does it tell us about the Harappan civilization? Its political structure. कुछ बताता है? हाँ, it indicates the existence of some government body or civic body which was responsible for collecting these grains and storing it at a central location. It may also indicate the presence of some kind of taxation system. It also tells us that the Harappans had sophisticated transportation and communication, since they had the ability to channelize the surplus from extensive farmlands into the city center. It can also indicate some kind of future planning or planning for a natural contingency or any other kind of contingency. So emergency planning का भी indication दे सकते हैं ये, right? So these kinds of things we get to know. Then what else can we find from these granaries? Fossilized remains of food grains, and this can tell us about the cropping pattern and crop diversity of the Harappan people. Okay, these kinds of things we can know about. Next, we have a great bath. What kind of a structure is this? It is an open water tank, roughly 8 by 11 by 2 meters in depth. Now, important features क्या हैं इसके? Made entirely out of burnt bricks. Harappans were the first to use burnt bricks at such a large scale. Now, the unique feature of this particular structure is that even today, all the surfaces of the Great Bath are completely watertight. What does this tell us about the Harappan people? They had advanced material knowledge. Their skills with regards to stonework, masonry, etc., cementing, all of these things were extremely advanced. What was the purpose of this great bath? In the absence of script, we cannot say for sure, but according to most archaeologists and historians, it probably had some ritualistic significance. So on specific occasions, on specific festivals, etc., people may have been expected to take a bath in this probably holy structure, right? So यहाँ पे holy water probably रहता होगा. Then a multi-pillared assembly hall has also been discovered. What does this tell us? That this was probably a place of assembly for which category of the people? Ordinary people or elites? Elites. कहाँ पे मिला है ये? In the upper part of the town or in the lower part of the town? Upper part. So it was probably an assembly hall or for a political assembly. But in the absence of script, we cannot know for sure. Bronze dancing girl statue has been found, right? Now, what was the technique used for making the statue? The lost wax technique. This is also known as the Sir Perdue technique. French naam hai. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but lost wax technique or Sir Perdue technique. मतलब क्या होता है lost wax technique का? It is a technique of metal casting. ठीक है? So कोई भी statue बनाना हो, so what the artist would do is he would take a block of beeswax and then carve it in the desired shape. Then he would pack it in a covering of mud, right? He would allow that covering to dry, leaving behind a small hole in it. Then once the cast is dry, he would turn it over and then pour hot molten metal into the opening. Result क्या होगा? The wax is going to melt and flow away, leaving behind the solid metal object. Then the cast could be broken and final touches could be given. इसको बोलते हैं lost wax technique. Why lost wax? Because the wax used is lost in the process. ठीक है? Now, what are the features of this bronze dancing girl? Significance क्या है bronze dancing girl image का? What does it tell us about the Harappan people? It gives us some cultural insights about them. For example, that they valued music, dance, entertainment industry in general. Music and dance in ancient cultures were often part of the theater tradition. So this may also represent the presence of theater in the Harappan civilization. What else? और क्या cultural insights मिल सकती हैं? The dress that she is wearing, the jewelry that she is wearing, the way that she has done her hair. This can tell us about the taste, the fashions of the Harappan people, what the Harappan people looked up to, right? These kinds of things we can know about. Then the artifact was first studied by John Marshall, who named it as Dancing Girl. Why? Because this statue reminded him of something else. Kya? The Nautch girls of इंडियन रॉयल कोर्ट्स. अब नॉच अंग्रेजी वर्जन था नाच का, ठीक है. सो रॉयल कोर्ट्स में, दरबार में, who do you think were kept as these नाच girls? People from respectable families or people from some other backgrounds? Other backgrounds. Usually they were involved in the prostitution activities as well. So this may also indicate the presence of prostitution in the Harappan civilization, but without the presence of other evidence, we cannot say for sure. Okay? Then we have the stone bust of a bearded priest. When John Marshall first studied it, he called it the priest king. Why priest king? Because of his kingly appearance, he had a very well-groomed beard. He appeared to be somebody of a wealthy background. The kind of clothing that he was wearing seemed to be quite expensive. He was adorned with rich ornamentation, heavy jewelry he was wearing. On his head, he had a fillet, probably made of gold or some other material. Then he also had a necklace around his neck, right? So because of these kinds of things, John Marshall estimated that this must have been an extremely important person, probably the king. And why priest? Because of the expression on his face. कैसे expression है? Meditative, शांत, एकदम calm है. His eyes are half closed as if in meditation. And on the basis of this analysis, John Marshall and other historians like him came to the conclusion that the Harappan civilization was ruled by priest kings. Theocracy tha, ठीक है? That means where the religious class had political authority, right? However, we cannot know for sure without the absence of written records, and therefore modern historians have challenged this interpretation. They have simply regarded him as a bearded priest. What is the significance of this? First of all, it tells us about the high level of stone sculpture mastery that the Harappan artists had. Secondly, it tells us about the presence of different racial groups being present in the Harappan civilization. This person who has been depicted, he does not have the normal South Asian facial features. Rather, he appears to be someone who belong to Central Asia or maybe even to the steppe region. So foreign ancestry इसमें दिख रहा है, right? So these kinds of things we can know about. Then from Mohenjo-daro we have found the largest collection of seals, right? Including the two most famous ones. कौन से? The Mother Goddess seal and the Pashupati seal. On the Mother Goddess seal, we have the image of a woman with an elaborate headdress with while she is giving birth. Giving birth to what? A plant, right? So she is a representation of the fertility goddess. This indicates the popularity of the fertility cult. In the foreground, on one side of the seal, there is another image of a man who is holding a woman on knife's edge. So he has held up a knife to a woman's throat, right? What does this indicate? The possibility of the practice of human sacrifice. But whether human sacrifice was actually practiced or not, we do not know for sure. It may simply have been a symbolic representation. Symbol of what? Sacrificial rituals. So this further reinforces the presence of fertility cult in the Harappan civilization. Then, dusra, Pashupati seal. In the center of the image, what are you going to find? A male figure in a seated position. He has folded his legs in a yogic posture and is seated upon a deer skin. Beneath the throne or beneath his seat are depictions of two antelopes, दो deer बने हुए हैं. And he is surrounded on four sides by four different animals. कौन कौन से animals हैं? The tiger, elephant, buffalo, and rhinoceros. Right? Now, when John Marshall studied this for the first time, he called it Proto Shiva. ठीक है? Why Proto Shiva? Why did he regard this image to be a prototype of the later Hindu god Shiva? Because of the association of both these deities with animals. Both of them are considered to be the lord of animals, right? And that is why John Marshall called it Proto Shiva. More recent historians, on the other hand, have rejected this idea because we are uncertain about the real origins of the Hindu god Shiva. What was the inspiration behind it? Whether there is any connection with this Harappan deity or not, we cannot know for sure. And now he is simply referred to as Pashupati instead of Proto Shiva. Okay? Then finally, we have the discovery of cotton cloth, spindle, and whorls. Right? What does this indicate? That cotton manufacturing, cotton textile manufacturing took place at Harappa. Harappans at Mohenjo-daro. Harappans cultivated a large amount of cotton, right? And ये जो spindles and whorls हैं, the context in which they have been discovered, this gives us further insight into the activity of textile manufacturing. Where have they been discovered from? From the houses of ordinary individuals or from houses of the elites or both? दोनों. ठीक है? So we have spindles and whorls. Spindle is something that is used for spinning the cloth, making the yarn, and whorl चरखी होती है जिसपे धागे को कलेक्ट किया जाता है. Right? Now this tells us that cotton spinning or yarn making of cotton yarn was a household activity for all people. Okay? So it was part of their daily life. It was part of their daily routine. Spindles and whorls are also made of different categories of materials. In the majority of cases, ordinary people के घर से बहुत high value material मिलेंगे या फिर मामूली ordinary materials मिलेंगे? Ordinary. So in most cases, they were made of terracotta. But from some houses, we have the spindles and whorls made of extremely precious items such as faience. Faience is a glass-like material that was used in the Bronze Age, right? So that indicates that they may also have been used by the elites for spinning yarn. Clear? Hai? So these are the things that we get to know. Yeah, cotton was cultivated during that time. तभी ना कॉटन क्लॉथ आएगा. तो ये हो गया मोहनजोदारो. नेक्स्ट इंपॉर्टेंट साइट कौन सा है? हरप्पा. Where is it located? On the banks of the river Ravi in the Montgomery district of Punjab, present day Pakistan. क्या मिला है यहां से? You don't find a single great granary, rather, you find 12 granaries arranged in two parallel rows of 6 granaries each. इस तरह से अरेंज्ड है, ठीक है. सिग्निफिकेंस क्या है इन ग्रेनरीज का? सेम एज द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ द ग्रेट ग्रेनरी इन मोहनजोदारो. Secondly, what do we find? The red sandstone bust of a man, right? So यहाँ पे देखने के लिए क्या मिलता है? It is missing everything else. Head is not there, arms are not there, legs are not there, right? But on the hip joint, on the shoulder joint, on the neck joint, what do we have? We have hollow sockets. That means this is probably the part of a doll with moving parts, right? Of a statue with moving parts, indicating what? That it may have been used in puppetry, right? So this may indicate the practice of puppetry in the Harappan civilization. और क्या मिलता है यहां से? We also have another sandstone bust of a man, which has been called the dancing Nataraj by John Marshall. Right. Once again, the statue is in a highly damaged state. It is missing its legs. Both its legs are missing. Half of its arm only exists, and its head is also missing. Why then is it known as the dancing Nataraj? Because the rest of the bust shows a male figure who is in fluent motion, almost as if he is dancing. And when John Marshall observed it for the first time, he directly drew a parallel with it and the Shiva Nataraj, Chola bronze sculpture se. Okay? That is why he called it the dancing Nataraj. And lastly, we have discovered a large number of different burial practices. Such as direct burial, coffin burial, double burial, pit burial, urn burial, partial burial, secondary burial, fragmentary burial, etc. What does all this tell us? That different ritual systems probably existed side by side, that these people belong to different religious faiths, right? So this indicates the presence of multiple religions at the site of Harappa. ठीक है? The next site that we have, that is Kalibangan. कहां पर लोकेटेड है? In the Hanumangarh district of Rajasthan, North Rajasthan में है. On the banks of the river Ghaggar. Now, this river no longer exists. It has dried up almost completely. But this river channel was earlier believed to be the Saraswati River, which later dried up. In fact, the drying up of the Saraswati River has been cited as one of the important reasons for the decline of the Harappan civilization. Okay. What are the things that we find from here? We find a plowed field. Have we discovered any physical plow? Plow nahi mila hai, probably because it was made of some perishable material such as wood. So Harappans were probably using the wood plow, not the bronze plow or stone plow. That is why plow is no longer available, but a plowed field has been found. कैसे preserve हुआ ये plowed field? See, the farmer must have prepared the field just before the flood season when the sowing was done, right? Now, floods may have been extremely dangerous that particular year, and the farmer had to leave his field, abandon his field, and run away, never to return, right? Now, the river, along with water, also brought along a great degree of silt, thus covering the field in a layer of silt. And it was never touched again till it was finally excavated. Okay, that is how we find the plowed field. और क्या मिलता है यहाँ से? We find evidence of catastrophic flooding, which has been cited as another example of, or sorry, another explanation for the decline of the Harappan civilization. Thirdly, we find a large amount of fire altars. Fire altar matlab havan kund, right? That means some sacrificial rituals must have been going on. And finally, what else do we find? We find, sorry, pre and early Harappan occupation from Kalibangan, right? So this is a very important site to support which theory of origin of the Harappan civilization? The indigenous gradual origin, that the Harappan people were living at Kalibangan not only during the mature phase, but even during the preceding phases, that is the early and pre-Harappan phases. Okay? So ये हो गया. See, when an excavation is done, then the uppermost layers are the ones which were deposited most recently at Kalibangan. These belong to the mature Harappan phase, right? What are the things that we find over here? The use of burnt bricks, the use of large quantities of metallic tools, the use of script on a large scale, the use of polished pottery of high variety, the presence of a large facility for manufacturing bead jewelry, etc. We also find extensive टाउन प्लानिंग, ठीक है. देन फर्दर एक्सकवेशंस वर कैरिड आउट. इसके नीचे एक और ऑक्यूपेशनल लेवल मिला, दैट वाज कॉल्ड द अर्ली हरप्पन फेज. What do we find from here? Do we find the same kind of extensive town planning? No. Do we have evidence of the extensive use of burned bricks? No. Do we have the widespread use of metallic tools, script, polished pottery and manufacturing of bead jewelry? Milta hai, but in a much less developed state. So, less developed material culture. And then last में क्या मिलेगा? Pre-Harappan occupation level. From here we get the indications of Neolithic and Chalcolithic phase. ठीक है? So on the basis of this kind of analysis, it becomes clear how descendants of the pre-Harappan people evolved into the early Harappan culture and finally attained civilization status during the mature phase. ठीक? ये हो गया कालीबंगन. Next important site, Lothal. Where is it located? यहां पर. Lothal. Located on the Gujarat coast on the Gulf of Kutch. On the banks of the river Bhogwa. What are the important discoveries from Lothal? Most important discovery? Man-made dockyard. This is the largest artificial structure in the entire Harappan civilization, made entirely of burnt bricks. What does it indicate? The presence of maritime trade, flourishing maritime trade. Trade with whom? With other coastal communities in the subcontinent as well as other civilizations such as the Mesopotamian civilization. So from here we also get the largest collection of Mesopotamian and Persian seals. And this indicates what? The flourishing overseas trade of the Harappan people. Then we have also discovered rice husk from Lothal, indicating the cultivation of rice in this vicinity. And finally, from here we find a peculiar type of burial pattern known as double burial. What is it? One grave, two occupants, two peoples buried together. What may this indicate? दो लोग एक साथ क्यों buried होंगे? Because the belief was that people who are together should also remain together in the afterlife. This may indicate the presence of monogamy. Now, how do you think that these two people came to be together in the afterlife? एक साथ कैसे दफन हुए होंगे? दोनों को एक साथ मारा गया होगा? maybe not. We do not know for sure. So we are uncertain about the practice of sati or some other ritual. Or maybe it may have also been sata ki wife ki death hui to pati ko maar diya, right? Saath mein dafna diya. Thing is that over here we have examples of two men being buried together, one man, one woman being buried together, and two women also being buried together. So it is not necessary that they were married to each other, or even if they were, maybe the Harappans may have had more enlightened views with regards to monogamy than our present culture, right? Maybe this may also indicate the presence of homosexuality, but we cannot know for sure. Current circumstances हमको पता नहीं, right? So this was Lothal. Next important site, Chanhud-Daro, located in present-day Sindh, on the banks of the river Indus. Important findings. First of all, it was a factory site for manufacture of jewelry. ठीक है? Bead jewelry. What were these beads made of? Semi-precious stones and precious metals. Semi-precious stones including agate, jasper, carnelian, or maybe even corals or shell or ivory. ठीक है? So both mineral as well as biological remains से बनते थे, right? And precious metals such as gold, silver, copper, bronze. Copper and bronze we are also counting among precious metals because they were extremely rare and difficult to come by back then. Okay? Now, how do we know that this was a factory site, manufacturing zone? ये कैसे पता लगता है हमें? Because we have discovered a large number of workshops where we have specialized tools such as drills made of chalcedony for drilling holes into long beads of these semi-precious stones. Then we also have a large amount of raw material in different stages of refinement. So some processed, some semi-processed, some unprocessed raw material also we have found. This was a factory site. Secondly, Chanhud-Daro is an exception when it comes to Harappan town morphology and urban town planning. The general pattern that we see in the planning of Harappan cities is that the city consists of two different levels of occupation. A lower town, which was occupied by the ordinary common people, commoners, and an upper town or citadel, which was a fortified settlement belonging to the ruling class. At Chanhud-Daro, however, there is no such a distinction. And what do we find? That there is a single level of occupation rather than two separate levels of occupation. And finally, one interesting discovery from Chanhud-Daro is the use of लिपस्टिक. ठीक है? ये मिला कैसे है? कैसे पता चला कि लिपस्टिक है? तो लिपस्टिक नहीं मिला है हमको, रूज टाइप का मिला है। एंड बनाया कैसे जाता था ये रूज? इट वाज मेड फ्रॉम अ कंपाउंड ऑफ मर्क्यूरी सल्फाइड, उसको बोलते हैं सिनाबार, दैट इज ब्राइट रेड इन कलर, राइट? इट वाज प्रॉब्ली क्रश्ड डाउन एंड मिक्स्ड with beeswax which was molten and then probably stored in jars or other some things, और उसको हाथ से निकाल करके, उंगली से निकाल करके probably लगाते थे. It may also have been used as a ruse or something, right? So this indicates the importance of cosmetics for the Harappan people. They were quite concerned about presenting themselves and were concerned about their appearance. ठीक है? So materialism का ये एक outcome होता है that once people get the luxury of time and they are secure with regards to their survival needs, they start thinking about these external ways to enrich their lives. And one of the ways that they would do this is by using cosmetics. Okay? Then next we have Dholavira. कहां पर? In the Kutch district of Sindh. Sorry, Gujarat. On the banks of the river Luni. ठीक है? Now, what are the important findings from Dholavira? Once again, like Chanudaro, it is also an exception to the ordinary way of town planning. Ordinary way of town planning में क्या था? 2 levels of occupation. At Dholavira, we find 3 levels of occupation. That is an upper town, a middle town, and a lower town. And unique feature ये है that in other cities only the upper town was surrounded by a fortification wall, but over here the entire settlement is surrounded by fortifications. Another way in which Dholavira bucks the trend of Harappan city planning is in the use of the construction material. At other places, what is the construction material ordinarily used? Burned bricks. At Dholavira, burned bricks were not present and stone was exclusively used for construction. Thirdly, at Dholavira, we have a unique monument, the likes of which are not found in any other Harappan site, and that is an arena with an open floor plan with the open space in the middle and seating on the outside, on the outskirts. So this represents a stadium or an arena. Stadium-like structure is present over here. The region of Kutch in Gujarat किस तरह का region है? Arid region or humid region? Arid region hai, right? Therefore, water scarcity has always been a big problem. And as a result, water conservation was a much higher priority for the people of Dholavira than the other dwellers of the Harappan civilization. Now, at Dholavira, therefore, you will find an elaborate system of water harvesting and conservation. क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? That there exist interconnected tanks or reservoirs at different levels, which are connected to each other through channels or culverts. All these structures are made of stone. Idea kya hai? That rainwater would first collect in the first chamber, then excess water would flow down into the next chamber, and then so on and so forth. Okay? So the people of Dholavira had taken care of their water needs in this manner. And another unique find from Dholavira is the discovery of a large signboard consisting of 10 Harappan script symbols. Okay? So these are the important discoveries from Dholavira. Next important site is Rakhi Gadi. कहाँ पे located है? In the Hisar district of Haryana. On the banks of the river Ghaggar. Now, what is the importance of Rakhi Gadi? First of all, it is the largest Harappan site to have been discovered till date. Okay? In fact, it is at least twice as large as the next largest Harappan site, that is Mohenjo-daro. और क्या मिला है यहाँ से? We find a large number of fire altars. And this site is also very important because of the recent DNA study, where researchers could not find the R1A1 gene, thus disproving the theory of foreign origin of the Harappan civilization. Okay? What else do we get from here? We get evidence of animal sacrifice and fire pits, both of which indicate the importance of the fertility rituals for the people of Rakhi Gadi. ये हो गया राखी गढ़ी. Then the next site is रोपड़. कहाँ पे है ये? In the Rupnagar district of Punjab, on the banks of the river Satluj. Significance क्या है इसका? That this was the first site to be excavated post independence. And interesting फाइंड क्या यहां से मिला है? डॉग बेरियल, राइट? So a person and a dog are buried together in an oval grave. Right? So ये हो गया रोपड़ in Punjab. Then we have सुरकोतड़ा. कहाँ पर? In Gujarat. What is the importance of this site? Horse remains have been discovered from here. किस तरह के remains हैं? एक्सटेंसिव remains या partial remains? Partial remains. क्या मिला है? Teeth only. Now, on the basis of this, some historians claimed that this is proof that Harappans had domesticated the horse. However, this finding has not yet been substantiated. क्यों? First of all, the teeth specimens belong to a wild species of horse, not a domesticated species. And secondly, the level at which the horse remains have been discovered, they are different from the occupational level which belongs or corresponds to the Harappan period. तो हरप्पन पीरियड यहाँ पे है, हॉर्स रिमेन्स दूसरे लेवल से मिल रहे हैं. दैट मीन्स इफ द यूपीएससी आस्क्स हरप्पन्स हैड डोमेस्टिकेटेड द हॉर्स और नॉट, आंसर वुड बी नहीं किया था. देन नेक्स्ट वी हैव बनावली. कहाँ पे लोकेटेड है? वही जो राखी गढ़ी वाला एरिया ना, इट इज ऑल्सो लोकेटेड इन दी हिसार डिस्ट्रिक्ट ओनली. On the banks of the river Ghaggar, which is now dried up. Importance of Banavali. Like Kalibangan, from here we get the evidence of not only mature Harappan phase, but also early Harappan phase. Secondly, like Chanudaro, there are not two levels of occupation, but a single level of occupation. Thirdly, like the other cities of the Harappan civilization, instead of burnt bricks, mud bricks exclusively were used for construction. Fourthly, while the ordinary Harappan cities were planned on the grid or chessboard pattern with the streets and roads intersecting each other at right angles, instead over here we have a radial pattern of planning where the different sectors were connected to each other with ring roads and intersecting roads connecting the different ring roads. ठीक है, यहाँ पे क्या था? रेडियल प्लानिंग और रेडियल पैटर्न एंड oval plan. All other cities were rectangular in shape. This was oval in shape. And finally, from here, we have found a large hoard of certain extremely valuable objects made out of lapis lazuli. Indicating that this was probably a factory site for lapis lazuli. Lapis lazuli is a semi-precious stone which is bright blue in color. There is only one place in the entire world where it is found, that is in the Waghan corridor of the Badakhshan Valley in Afghanistan. ठीक है, केवल वहां से मिलता है. And finally, हाँ, single level of occupation ये बता दिया है. So these are the important Harappan towns and the important discoveries over here. तो वे बताओ जल्दी से कि बियर्डेड प्रीस्ट कहां से मिला है? मोहनजोदारो से. डॉकयार्ड डबल बेरियल हरप्पा एंड लोथल. टेराकोटा रेप्लिका ऑफ अ प्लाउ, ये कहां से मिला है? शायद मैं बताना भूल गया था. बनावली से मिला. हाउ अबाउट, लेट्स से, ग्रेट बाथ? मोहनजोदारो से मिला है. स्टोन कंस्ट्रक्शन, फीचर ऑफ Dholavira. Which Harappan city is situated on the banks of the river Bhogwa? कौन सा? लोथल. From which Harappan city do we find a radial pattern of planning? बनावली से मिला है. From where do we find the ploughed field? Which prominent Harappan city gives evidence of its occupation during the pre-Harappan Chalcolithic phase? Kalibangan. क्वेश्चन होता केवल अर्ली हरप्पन का तो बोथ कालीबंगन एज वेल एज बनावली. ठीक है. देन राइस हस्क, लोथल से. लार्जेस्ट कलेक्शन ऑफ सील्स, कहां पे? मोहनजोदारो से. डांसिंग नटराज कहां से? हड़प्पा से. ठीक है. सो इस तरह से भी क्विज करना अपने आप को शुरू कीजिए. ठीक है. Next element of the Harappan civilization that we need to talk about is Huh? Yeah, it shows trade between India and Afghanistan at this point of time. In fact, there's a place called Shortughai in North Afghanistan. ठीक है, तो मैप पे वो कहीं यहाँ दिखेगा. This was a Harappan trading outpost. ठीक है, so this was an important hub for Harappan trade with not only Afghanistan and the rest of Central Asia, but it was also an important crossroads which connected to the trade routes connecting India and the Persian civilization and the Mesopotamian civilization after that. ठीक है, so it was a Harappan trading outpost. यहाँ पे क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? Large collection of copper and bronze objects. Harappan style town planning, large number of Mesopotamian and Harappan seals, crude lapis lazuli stone, as if it has been recently quarried and brought over here. We also find canal irrigation, which was not practiced anywhere else in the Harappan civilization. Okay? Elsewhere in the Harappan civilization, common practice of irrigation was flood irrigation, right? Canal irrigation केवल यहीं पे मिलता है. So, would it be correct to say that the Harappans had canal irrigation or not? नहीं होगा, right? In fact, they had only flood irrigation. Canal irrigation was present at Shortughai, but it was a trading outpost, not a proper Harappan settlement. Clear? Now, next, we have to talk about Harappan town planning. The Harappan civilization was unique among all the other Bronze Age civilizations due to its extensive town planning, which was not found in the other civilizations. Its important features include planning the cities on the grid or chessboard pattern, meaning the different roads and streets were completely straight and intersected each other at right angles. Now, there are certain obvious advantages to this kind of planning. Kya? Suppose you had to go from point A to point B. मान लो कि आपने ये वाला रास्ता चूज किया, but you find a blockage over here. अब क्या करना होगा? Simply need to take an alternative route, right? So as a result, congestion in traffic congestion in such cities is not a major problem. Secondly, since the city is oriented in the cardinal directions, that is north, south, west, and east, during the summer season, the wind is going to blow from the west. During the winter season, the wind is going to blow from the east. और जितना भी कूड़ा यहाँ पे इकट्ठा हुआ है, all of this is going to be carried out. So self-cleaning mechanism of the wind is going to work. In comparison, let us suppose कि एक arterial road के along tributary roads plan कर दिए जाते, ऐसे में क्या होता? To get from point A to point B, you have no alternative roads. First of all, तो congestion का problem बहुत ज़्यादा होगा. Secondly, all the debris is going to be blown from both sides right onto the main street, right? So there were obvious advantages to this kind of grid planning. Secondly, Harappan cities were also often divided into two levels of occupation. The upper town and the lower town. Upper town was a fortified settlement known as the citadel. Lower town consisted of houses of ordinary people, market spaces, and other public spaces, right? Upper town consisted of public buildings and residences of the ruling class. Thirdly, और क्या features हैं हड़प्पन urban planning के? They had an extremely advanced drainage system, right? Now, every house in Mohenjo-daro had its own well. Okay? So houses were single or double storied structures जिनके बीच में एक open courtyard होता था, right? And each of these courtyards, almost every house had its own well. Every house had a separate bathing area and a separate toilet, along with a separate kitchen. All these had watertight brick floors and जो excess water या फिर dirty water है उसके लिए एक drain outlet होता था, right? Now क्या होगा कि घर से बाहर पानी बहा तो उसको ऐसे ही रहने देंगे? No. All these drains were connected to other drains which were constructed just in the middle of the roads, right? And all these streets, all these drains were covered with tiles of terracotta with the manholes at regular intervals for cleaning and maintenance. Then these drains would further open into larger drains which were located in the middle of major thoroughfares or roadways. Okay? And in this way, all the excess or dirty water was carried outside the city. Clear? Now, this kind of drainage system is not found anywhere else in the world except for a small Greek settlement in Crete. ठीक है, तो केवल वहां पे इससे जैसा सिमिलर सिस्टम मिलता है, अदरवाइज नोवेयर एल्स इन दी वर्ल्ड इज इट फाउंड. और बताइए और क्या फीचर्स थे हड़प्पन टाउन प्लानिंग के? व्हाट एल्स? देयर वर एडिक्वेट प्रोविजंस फॉर hygiene, right? For example, waste pits or waste baskets were placed at regular intervals on the sides of the streets. Further, the streets were also well lit in the night time. So street lamps were posted on regular intervals on poles. Further, और क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? The use of burnt bricks universally for making all types of structures. Further, we find the presence of different sizes of homes. Not all homes are of the same size. What does this indicate? Economic stratification, social stratification within the society. And finally, we find that doors and windows किस तरफ खुलते थे? घर के आगे या घर के पीछे? पीछे. On the rear of the homes. Why do you think this was done? For privacy? नहीं. Ancient cultures में privacy का concept probably नहीं exist करता था. Idea was that ये घर है, इधर से एक स्ट्रीट निकल रहा है, इधर से एक स्ट्रीट निकल रहा है, राइट? यू ओपन दी डोर ओवर हियर, सामने से कोई चलते हुए आ रहा होगा, उसकी नाक टूट जाएगी, राइट? कंजेशन वुड बी कॉज. सो बेटर ऑल्टरनेटिव इज टू ओपन दीज विंडोज एंड डोर्स एट द बैक इंस्टेड ऑफ द फ्रंट. यूपीएससी ने इसी के ऊपर एक क्वेश्चन पूछा, क्या? To what extent has the urban planning and culture of the Indus Valley civilization provided inputs to present day urbanization? Discuss. So how should you approach this question? You'll have to incorporate the features of Harappan town planning, and you'll have to show the examiner how the same features are valued by modern urban planners. कैसे करोगे? Features को enlist करोगे, and you'll have to demonstrate with an example how this feature is applied in a modern city, right? So you may begin by saying that the Harappans planned their cities on the grid or chessboard pattern. The roads and streets were straight, intersecting each other at right angles, and this plan has certain benefits such as lower traffic congestion and self-cleaning mechanism. Presently, Delhi and Chandigarh follow a similar plan. Second, generally, Harappan cities had two levels of settlement, citadel or upper town, and unfortified settlement or lower town. Citadel consisted of all the important public buildings and was meant for the ruling class. The unfortified lower town was meant for the common class. Such a distinction is also present in all the modern cities such as New Delhi. जो ruling class एक किस एरिया में रहता है? लटिन्स दिल्ली वाले एरिया में, और बाकी लोग, हम जैसे लोग लटिन्स दिल्ली में नहीं, उसके आउटस्कर्ट्स में, बाकी जगह पर, राइट? Then Harappan cities had fully covered drainage system beneath roads with regular manholes. Harappans were the first in the world to make such drains. This is a feature of all the well-planned cities of the modern world. Whether you look at New York or you look at Paris or London, क्या देखने के लिए मिलता है? जितना डेवलपमेंट शहर के ऊपर होता है, उतना ही शहर के नीचे भी होता है. They have an entire subterranean network of drains, not only storm drains but also sewage drains. Then in the Harappan cities, waste pits and baskets were placed at regular intervals on the roadside to keep the city clean and hygienic. Another essential feature of the civilization was the presence of street lighting. Both these elements are present in almost every modern planned city. Why? Because this is an extremely important component of the quality of life of the urban dwellers, right? That is street lighting and good hygiene. Then shared community spaces such as assembly halls, stadiums, marketplaces found in Harappan cities are common to all modern cities which are meant to enrich the life of residents. तो market places हो गए, theaters हो गए, या फिर stadiums हो गए, और even malls of the present day, ये क्यों बनाए जाते हैं? so that the common people's lives may be enriched. The Harappan planners had accounted for this, and this has continued to inform modern city planners. Different sized houses made of burnt bricks indicate class differences and is also a feature of modern cities. So in all modern cities, you will find both the rich as well as the poor and the middle class individuals. That is why government housing जो होती है उसके भी categorization होते हैं. HIG high income group, LIG low income group, MIG और जनता फ्लैट, राइट? ये सब आपने सुना होगा probably, right? Then finally, rear facing doors and ventilations can be observed in Harappan houses which did not open from the front like many modern cities such as Chandigarh. यहाँ पे missing क्या है? इंट्रोडक्शन और कंक्लूजन. इंट्रोडक्शन में क्या लिखोगे? कैसे शुरू करोगे? Harappan civilization is unique in the history of the human history because of its great impact that it continues to have in the modern world. One facet of this is the impact that it has on informing modern urban planners. The following features of Harappan cities are often valued by urban city planners. एक एक करके features को enlist करोगे. And then finally क्या लिखोगे? Conclusion में. From this analysis, it becomes clear that the Harappan urbanization was based on certain universal principles which transcend the boundary of time and space and are universally valued in all contexts. तो ये जो features हैं, ये ऐसा नहीं है that they may be applied in only a particular context or may be valuable for a particular people or in a particular time. These are the basic building blocks of good cities, and that is why they continue to remain relevant even in the modern world. That is what we will conclude with. Clear hai? Now, some aspects of the Harappan life are left, such as their material life, social life, religious life, etc. These we are going to discuss in our next lecture. अगला lecture कब होगा? Thursday को होगा, ठीक है? So Thursday, Friday and Saturday we are going to have 3 more lectures. पहले हरप्पन सिविलाइजेशन कंप्लीट करेंगे, फिर वैदिक एज, एंड देन वी आर गोइंग टू मूव ऑन टू दी महाजनपदा पीरियड. एनी डाउट्स? नो? ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स, एनी क्लैरिफिकेशंस इफ यू गाइस नीड? नो? चलिए देन, थैंक यू फॉर योर टाइम. I'll see you guys on Thursday.